Hello and welcome to the Anxiety Cure Crash Course. My name is Justin Cohen. I'm a global speaker, best-selling author, and I am delighted to have you on day one of this program. Thank you for following through on your commitments and being here, because that's a lot about what this is about. Making a commitment to yourself, to your own well-being, because you're going to see how important that is to your effectiveness in the world, to your relationships, and even your financial and business success. But you know, all of that aside, without that inner peace and calm and ease, well, all those other things really aren't worth very much, are they? So who is this program for? Well, if you are struggling with a particular challenge in your life, a relationship challenge, a business challenge, financial challenge, everybody's life looks better than mine on Facebook challenge, well, this is for you, absolutely. Anxiety is connected to specific challenges in our lives, and I'm going to be providing the tools to break through those. But perhaps it's more than that for you. Perhaps you actually have an anxiety disorder, intrusive thoughts, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, panic disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, social anxiety, general anxiety disorder, right? If you've actually been diagnosed, yes, this is for you too. If you haven't been diagnosed and you wonder if perhaps you do have a particular disorder like that, well, this program is going to give you a sense of, well, not just whether you do or you don't, but how you can actually break through those. Because I want to tell you that whether you have a diagnosis or not, often when we get that kind of label, we think that there's something wrong with us, we're broken, we're defective, and you're going to learn on this program that nothing could be further from the truth. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your brain. I can assure you of that, because emotional distress is actually not connected to any real organic brain issue, right? It is something actually, as you're going to see, that we develop and we learn, and we can unlearn it, and you're going to see exactly how to do that. But if you are dealing with emotional distress of any kind, I want you to know that you are not alone. There are many different personality profiling systems, Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, but the most authoritative, right, the most scientifically valid and reliable personality profiling system is known as the Big Five. It's got extroversion and introversion and agreeableness, disagreeableness, and it is a continuum, right? So often when people think of these personality traits, they think, well, I'm either an extrovert or an introvert. Actually, most people are in the middle. They are ambiverts, yeah? Well, one of the Big Five, and these are pretty definitive in terms of understanding human personality, is neuroticism. Now, neuroticism was Freud's term for anxiety. And what this means is that all of us register as anxious, as emotionally distressed to some degree. Now, it's a continuum, so some people are really high and some people are low, but even people who are pretty low are still on the continuum, right? And so this is very much a part of being human, and we're going to understand why that is. It's got something to do with our human operating system. There is a little bug, not too serious if we understand what it is and what we can do about it, but we all have it, and we need to understand it if we can change it, right? You can't change what you don't really acknowledge, what you don't understand, and you're going to absolutely understand it before the end. Now, what is the current reality of emotional distress? Well, the reality is that emotional stress has significantly increased. Now, this is the time of Corona, and in the time of Corona, emotional distress severe enough to be considered a mental disorder has actually increased sevenfold. But even before Corona, we've been seeing very significant increases. 1 in 4 employees saying that they're on the verge of burnout. 2/3 saying that they're extremely stressed. Depression being the leading cause of disability. Anxiety, in fact, all mental disorders increasing virtually across every generation. So what is going on here? Well, some scientists believe that it's got to do with the new world that we live in. Social media, we're constantly seeing people with these fabulous lives that look better than ours, and that can create some envy and some distress. Of course, most of those people are dealing with a tremendous amount of emotional distress as well. That's why I like to call it fake book, right? And so we are faced with these idealized versions of other people's lives. And then what we also have is these social media sites like Facebook. They make their money out of advertising. And it so happens, as we will discover, our brains actually have a negativity bias. So there's an old phrase in the media: if it bleeds, it leads. And the brain will tend to look at the negative rather than the positive. We can understand why that is. Very important to understand why that is. So if you find that you're pretty negative, you're human. That's part of the operating system. We're going to learn how to change it. But what it means is that Facebook and many of these other social media sites, because they make money out of advertising, their adverts connect to more negative news. That's why you see all these conspiracy theories and fake news and junk news and all this nonsense. It's actually there to capture your eyeballs, right? And so we inundated with this negative news, even though if we look at the world itself, actually things have been getting better. Now, I know that sounds a little weird in the time of Corona, but actually, if we look at a trajectory of human progress, we actually see reductions in poverty, increases in longevity, reductions in crime. And I'm coming to you from South Africa with one of the highest crime rates in the world. But let's talk about this crime rate. Our human ancestors had a 1 in 4 chance of being murdered by a fellow human being. In South Africa, we have a 0.003% chance. Yeah? So again, we're prepared with a 0 chance, but the point is that we tend to sensationalize, amplify, and even exaggerate the kinds of threats that we have available to us. So yes, emotional distress has been going up, even though in many ways the world has been getting better. And what that shows us is that emotional distress has less to do with what's going on out there and more to do with what's going on in here. Now, every day I'm going to be sharing some insight with you on emotional distress so that you can really get to understand this, and by understanding it, learn actually how you can get on top of it and actually find those states of peace and calm and ease that I promise you are within your power to have. But I also want this to be a practical session. So every day I'm going to be giving you what I call an MRP. That's a mental reconditioning process, right? So this is something that I'm really going to encourage you to map out in your day, right? So that within your day you have taken, as you already have today, a 10 to 15 minute period, right, where you both get a lesson, right, so some insight, some theory, some understanding, right, so you can better understand, because it's through understanding that we ultimately can control, yeah, but not just get the insight, but I'm actually going to give you a process, right, so that you're going to start to create a habit, yeah, a mental habit. We all know that we've got to go and exercise for our body, and that's going to become a habit. Well, guess what? We've got to do some training for our minds as well. So this is called a mental reconditioning process. So what is today's mental reconditioning process? Well, understanding that we tend to be prone to high rates of emotional distress, well, it's useful to understand one of the reasons that is, and that actually has to do with what we call the stress response. Now, let me just be very clear. Stress is not the baddie. Stress is just arousal. It's just energy. Yeah, we need a certain amount of stress to get through the day, right? You've got no stress, you're either asleep or you're dead, right? But if you get too much stress, well, then it goes into what we call distress. So you actually want to think of stress as being in one of 2 categories. You've got eustress, which is the good stress, which helps you to perform, get through the day. And then you've got the distress. And the distress is when you're in anxiety and you're really not feeling great and you get the kind of brain fog and you kind of all over the place. Right? Now, a great way to understand this comes from Yerkes and Dodson. And these were some of the early researchers into stress, and this is the Yerkes-Dodson curve. Now, if you look at it, you've got stress, which is just arousal. That's all it is, really, and that's on the bottom axis there. And then you've got performance, right? And that's your ability to get out there and do what you need to, right? To focus, to be creative. Now, as you can see, as the curve goes up, you need a certain amount of arousal or stress to perform, right? But then at the top, right, which is your peak, that's your optimal amount of stress. If you get more stress, then your performance goes down. Yeah, and you know that, right? You know that when you're really anxious and brain fogged and you can't think clearly, you are not able to do what you need to do, right? You just kind of get all frazzled, right? That's why it's so important, folks, to get on top of this, not just for your emotional well-being, but for your effectiveness, for your ability to go out there and achieve what you need to and fulfill your purpose, right? Because if you're in this brain fog state, well, that's not very helpful, right? Now, we know that when you actually have those high rates of distress, when you're actually really not feeling great, we actually activate. Newsflash, you've got two brains. Now, this is a simplification, but it's a useful one, right? So you've got the lower brain, which is what we call the reptilian brain, part of the brain that we share with, you guessed it, reptiles. And that's where you've got the fight or flight response, right? And that's where you can immediately respond to danger. Then you've got the higher brain, right? That's the prefrontal cortex, where you've got creativity and focus and attention and your ability to go out there and do what you need to. Now, when we get into that very high level of stress, when we start to move into distress, we're in a lower brain state, right? And we're in fight or flight. Now, if you've got a tiger that you've got to deal with, right, that's great. But if you've actually got to deal with your boss or with a difficult client or even your partner, well, being in that lower brain state, actually, you know what happens. We talk about losing it. I lost my temper, and you often do something you regret. When in some ways you did lose it, you lost your higher brain, right? Because when you're a lower brain state, it's actually at the expense of your higher brain, right? And this is why high levels of emotional distress and anxiety can be so destructive to our ability to perform and do what we need to in the world. So how do we re-engage our higher brain? Well, today's mental reconditioning process is going to do this in just 3 slow, deep, rhythmic breaths. Because the research tells us that if we just take 3 slow, deep breaths, we can actually see the shift, yeah, of the glucose and nutrients and oxygen from the lower brain into the higher brain. And I want you to experience this right now. Now, as I share this process with you, it's a very, very powerful breathing technique. I want you to stand up if you can, or sit really upright in your chair and put your hand on your tummy. Now, when you breathe in, your tummy is going to go out. Yeah? Now, I know we do everything in our lives to keep our tummies in, and that's why many of us don't breathe properly. Yeah? Why does tummy go out? Because we want to get the air into the deepest part of our lungs, which slightly displaces our internal organs, and that pushes our tummies out. See, most of the time, we're breathing in this very shallow breathing, right? This chest breathing. Well, guess what? That's called stress response breathing. Stress response breathing is if you're running away from a lion, right? So you need the adrenaline, the cortisol to pump through your body, and that kind of breathing is associated with that particular neurochemical response. Yeah. So if you've got chest breathing, which is the shallow breathing, yeah, which is your stress breathing, well, the deep belly breathing, yeah, when the air goes into the deepest part of the lungs, is what we call relaxation response breathing, right? And that's the kind of breath that we want to get to counteract this distress. So when we breathe in, our tummies go out. It's like a balloon, right? It's like expanding your internal organs. And when you breathe out, tummy goes in, yeah? I want to actually show you that. So breathing in and breathing out. But if you did that, you probably already noticed yourself relaxing a little bit. Now, when you breathe in, do you feel more stressed or relaxed? You actually feel a little bit more stressed, right? When you breathe out, do you feel more stressed or relaxed? You feel a bit more relaxed, right? And so there's this very subtle stress response on the in breath, and there's a very subtle relaxation response on the out breath, right? And understanding that, what we're going to do is we're going to double the out breath. So we're going to breathe in for the count of 2 and out on the count of 4 to 4 beats, yeah? Breathing in on the count of 2 and out on the count of 4 to 4 beats. But instead of counting to 4, we're going to say the word calm, because we're actually going to program our brains a little bit just to relax, yeah? Using the power of those words, right? A little bit of self-hypnosis to actually get us into that relaxation state. And we're just going to do 3 slow deep breaths. I'm going to show you the power of this, right? So you can actually experience this shift from a stress to a relaxation response. So here we go. And you might want to close your eyes here, because this helps you to focus on your breath and also shuts down all that external stimulation, which can actually be, quite in itself, quite stressful. So here we go. Breathing in on the count of 2. Out on ka, breathing in on 2. Ka, breathing in on 2. How are you feeling? Huh? Maybe a little lightheaded, yeah? That's your brain thanking you, right? Because you're actually getting that oxygen and those glucose and nutrients into that prefrontal neocortex. Isn't it beautiful how just 3 slow, deep, rhythmic breaths can actually shift your state? So, folks, that was day 1 of your Anxiety Cure Crash Course, and that was your first mental reconditioning process. Now, let me just say, this is not a cure for anxiety. We're going to talk about the cure, okay? This is not cure. This is like exercise for your body, right? You're going to start to take 10 to 15 minutes every day beyond this program, right? That's what we actually want to create for you here, which is a new mental habit. And this is like exercise. Now, if you hurt your body, exercise is not going to be the cure, right? You might need physio, you might need to go to the doctor. I'm going to show you what that is on this program. But exercise is really good to condition your body, right? So that you are stronger and that you are more agile. And that's a little bit what this is about, right? This is something that you just do. First thing in the morning is a great time if that's when you're doing it now, or before you go to bed at night, as a conditioning process. So, and you can just do 3 slow, deep breaths, but you can do a few more of those, right? So you can just get yourself into that relaxation response, because we live so much of our lives in the stressed out state, yeah? We want to just be able to find that place of calm and ease and relaxation, which you're probably really enjoying right now, yeah? And so this is what we're going to map out for you for every day. So I really want to thank you for showing up, for following through on your commitment. This was day 1 of the Anxiety Cure Crash Course. Tomorrow is day 2. Make sure that you pitch up, okay? Because you want to now follow through on this commitment. You really want to start building that new habit. And tomorrow's a really important one, because I'm going to be talking about a specific category of people, what I call SAP, successful and privately distressed. People who are often really successful in one particular area of their life, business, finances, even relationship, but actually have these high rates of emotional distress. Yeah. And you might think that, if you have the business, the money, then you're going to be happy and no more emotional stress. Actually, it turns out that you can have even more. I'm going to show you why that is, but also show you what you need to do if you're one of those people, so that you can actually have those things and enjoy them without the emotional distress that accompanies them for so many people. So really excited to share that with you tomorrow. We're going to talk about SAP, successful and privately distressed, and of course you're going to get another mental reconditioning process, and this is a beautiful one. In fact, what I'm going to share with you tomorrow is the number 1 mental process associated with happiness. So you do not want to miss it. Until then, remember, there is nothing wrong with you that can't be fixed with what's right with you.